because we are right on time, and I'll do my best to kick us off, welcome people in, and I really appreciate you guys taking time to join us after a busy day at work. And I'm happy to host this evening for us. We're talking about, as we shared, a really important topic about keeping change human-centric. My name is Jennifer Jimbere. I'm on the board of directors for the Ontario ACMP chapter. And in my role, I'm responsible for professional development. So part of that is bringing this learning to you guys. I'm also a change consultant and professional coach for the last 14 years in my own practice, Jimbere Coaching and Consulting, and also the lead for change management and strategic initiatives at Cooperators, and an advocate and mentor for women in the Scotiabank Women's Mentorship Program. So tonight, our speaker is Michelle, and she's going to share a lot with you tonight to go through this topic. I want to make sure that for the next webinar, you're aware, coming up May 6th, we have Maxine who will be joining us, and we're going to be talking about driving global change, 5 strategies for cross-cultural success. So just get that into your calendars as well. We're going to be meeting May 6th, 5:30 to 6:30. Tonight we have the principal and owner of ChangeFit 360. She's a passionate organizational change management strategist and thought leader with proven expertise in executing change agility, change management, and change leadership programs that enhance and grow organizational change management and strategic business competency. I want to make sure we give her the time that she needs to share her content with you and engage us in a great conversation. And we're very blessed to have you here tonight, Michelle, because I know you've presented to a lot of different chapters and it's your first time here at the Ontario chapter. Yeah. So thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, well, thanks to Jennifer and the whole entire chapter. I'm excited to be with you all tonight. We are expecting some more folks to join us. So if you see other people popping in, like I'm seeing now, just know that that's okay. We are recording this and we'll allow people to come in as they can. Thanks for that great introduction, and just a minute or so more about me. ChangeFit 360, if you're not familiar with us, we are an ACMP qualified provider for CCMP, as well as a qualified provider for ATD, SHRM, and ICF, the Coaching Federation. I've also done a ton of work with ACMP Global conferences. Is anybody coming to Change Chicago? Anybody going to come to Change Chicago, which is in May? Nope, that's in my hometown. I'm close to Chicago, Illinois. I am speaking at that event. Nobody's coming. It doesn't look like. Maybe they are. But anyways, I'm thrilled to be here with you. My company, in addition to doing, the qualified training for folks like us for the CCMP, we also do, Fortune 500 training, change leadership training, kind of a whole host of kind of any and every change topic you can think of. For any role within your organization, we have something that fits that. So that's probably enough about me. Other than just to say I am a CCMP, one of the first 500, Pro Sciadcar, Masters in Organizational Behavior. Enough with the bio. So thrilled to be here with you tonight and talk about a topic that really became near and dear to my heart last year, but I think it continues into kind of where we are with organizations and, with organizations and change in general. I'm going to flip over my slide. So you're going to see the slide stop for a second here, just to flip to another deck. So give me a heartbeat and I'm going to move over to my slides. And I think this is again, a topic that I got really, really interested in. So I will be interested in your thoughts. If you have not ever seen me speak, my style is, yes, I have content to share. But what I commit to you is that you're going to walk away with all the content and a job aid. So I always give some kind of walk away material. And this will very much be a conversational hour, meaning there will be questions I'm asking you, and I encourage you in the chat to jump into the conversation. We'll also be doing a poll along the way. If you have questions, I would say bring them in anytime and every time. Jennifer or kindness are going to help me kind of filter those questions in. And my other commitment to you is if I'm not able to answer your question within our time frame, Jennifer and team can work with me offline, and I'll make sure I get, or on ACMP Connect, we'll make sure that we get you an answer, okay? Because this time tends to fly, I know. So the time for human-centric change is now. I'm kind of saying the title, but saying the time is now. And you might be scratching your head and saying, well, isn't change management human-centric? Right? If we think about the work we do, it's all on behalf of our impacted stakeholders. It's all about those humans, right? So the title is a little strange or punchy because you might think that change management is human-centric. It can be, but I think the way that traditional change management has kind of moved forward and what I'm seeing and I have seen, I think it can become a lot more humanistic. And so I'm going to make that case for you. So what we're going to do over the next hour is really talk about what human-centric change is. I'm going to differentiate it from what I'll call traditional change management. And I'm going to make the case for you why this matters and why it matters now. Again, we're going to compare it against what I'd call traditional change management. And probably the most important part of our time together is I want to give you practical, simple, and with walkaway tools, things that you can put into immediate practice. So yes, there's some content that kind of sets the stage, but more importantly, it's, are you walking away with something that you can put into immediate practice in your projects, in your work, in your teaching and training, as the gentleman was describing around children and change. I thought that was a really interesting perspective. So thank you for sharing that. So that's what we're going to look at over our time together. So we hear a lot about customer centricity. Right? If you work for a consumer products or even a B2B product, any company that's selling a product or service is very focused on customer centricity, right? How do our customers feel? How do we make them feel special? We listen to our customers. We give them concessions. That's the word I'm looking for. Customers king. We've all heard that before. Customer centricity is kind of front and center for lots of organizations, even non-for-profits. And I saw some interesting statistics on customer centricity recently about that even if somebody has a bad experience with an organization, if that organization is able to solve their issue or problem quickly, they actually will not leave, and they're, at least in this study, it showed that they actually, if that problem, issue, or concern is handled quickly and appropriately, they will stay with that organization, and their propensity to spend even more money with that organization increases. So obviously, customer centricity, showing up, being solid and positive on customer service, is critically important to organizations, no matter if they are for-profit, non-for-profit, they're selling a product or a service. Clearly, the data supports that. But it's kind of interesting. If you think about customer centricity in that lens, we're always looking outward, right? At what our customers, consumers, members are kind of how they're feeling, how they show up, how they're being heard, listened to, etc. But interestingly enough, inside an organization, I would argue that employees are customers. That, employees are the lifeblood of organizations, right? It's not those systems, even no matter how great those systems are. We can have great products, but if you have, poor employees, you're probably not going to have that great of a product after all. So employees being the lifeblood of an organization, really being the differentiator. I like to say that employees are customers, and sometimes organizations don't give the same concessions to their employees as they do their customers, consumers, or members. Okay? And that's kind of interesting if you think about it. If If you truly believe, as I do, that organizations' lifeblood is based on the people that work there, what they bring to it, and we're not treating our employees, and it's not exactly the same thing, but we're not treating our employees with the same kind of kid gloves as we do our customers. That's a little strange, right? That's a little strange. And so this is all about how do we make human centricity, and I'm going to tag that into employees as well. How do we make that similar into how we look at customer centricity? Customer centricity, as defined here, is it's all about the customer. The customer is king. Customer is at the center of what we do, and we focus on creating the best or optimal experience for our customers. But what about creating the best and optimal experience for our employees and putting the employee at the center of things? And then taking it a step further and saying, how can we really do this and change? How do we really make our employees or the human element the cornerstone of how we create change, how people experience change and the journey of change? So that's just a broad stroke definition. And I want to talk next about kind of what I think is happening with traditional change management versus this more human focused or human centric approach. But first, why human centric now? I mentioned that. So I think it's worth saying kind of what's happening in the environment in all of our organizations that have got us to the point now that I think the time for human centric change is now, now, now. One thing to think about are social movements and work trends as of late. So let me just build this slide quickly and then I'll talk about it. So Zippia.com is my source here. And the research shows, and none of this is new, none of this is net new from Zippia, that when we hire a new employee, have a new person in our organization, it will take them approximately on average 8 months until they're productive. 8 months until they're productive. That's a lot of investment if you think about it time-wise and financially for somebody to enter the organization. Those same new hires that take 8 months to productivity, I found this fascinating. Within their first 6 months of employment, even before they reach their full productivity, 33% of those folks will be looking for a new role. And 31% of that 33%, so what's that, about 10% of those folks actually will exit the organization within that first 6 months of employment and go elsewhere. I think those are kind of alarming statistics. And that whole turnover piece, bringing new people in and replacing them, according to Zippia, is about 18%, and cost organizations 18% turnover at a cost of $1 trillion annually. Couple that with what happened during COVID. And off the back of COVID, we had the Great Resignation. That is where, people decided after, before and during after COVID that they were burnt out, stressed out, and they either exited the workforce altogether or they left their current role for a different role. The Great Resignation, 20 million people engaged in some sort of that behavior, Great Resignation. Off the back of the Great Resignation or because of the Great Resignation, the people left standing in organizations that had lost personnel moved into this quiet quitting movement. And that was they got burnt out because now we're doing more with less. And so quiet quitting, if you're not familiar with that term, is I'm only going to do what's minimally necessary to remain employed. I'm not going to do above and beyond anything. And I've heard different variations of this. One of them being minimal Mondays. I'm tired from the weekend. It's Monday. I'm going to do minimal. You could couple that also with all the remote work, and we could talk, probably an hour about is remote work more productive or less productive, hybrid work, et cetera, et cetera. There's just a lot of things happening in this space. And I think work as we saw it pre-COVID, before the Great Resignation and quiet quitting, is, I think, changed forever. And so the point here is, if we're aware of these things, if there's all this movement happening, this turnover happening, and these other social movements that may cause more churn and turn, we certainly as change managers want to not contribute to that if we can avoid it, right? We want to help. We don't want people to be saturated, squeezed out, feeling dehumanized or devalued because of the work we're doing, causing them to then look to turn forward. That's why this is important here. And I think that's why the timing of a more humanistic approach is so important. I'm just going to keep going, but please in the chat, if you have questions, comments, or thoughts, please go ahead and put those in there. As promised, we will get to them. Here is an opportunity for you to chat. How has your organization been impacted by turnover? Remember, these numbers and these statistics are not new. So those are not new. So how has your organization been impacted by turnover in general? And or the great resignation, open roles, people doing more, or this quiet quitting that people are not willing to kind of go above and beyond. And this is not a change question. This is just more of an organizational question. What are you seeing? What are you seeing? Are these social movements and work trends, are they making it to your purview? Go ahead and chat. Go ahead.
I know in our team, we've had 3 changes in the last month.
Yeah, there you go. It's a lot, right? Chat, or we're a small group. So if folks want to come off mute, I'm okay with that too. If it's easier for you, I'm fine with that.
I'm seeing increasing turnover since last year. Let's see. Causing a number of reorganizations happening, 2 major reorganizations and pending layoffs.
Yep. And as you continue to chat, the other thing that it's not in the slide, but I think it's worth bringing up is, the way that the workforce is changing also in terms of the generations and how, the baby boomers by 2030 will all be in the retirement phase. The workforce is, the younger generations are starting to move through it. What they look for from work is different, which can impact their staying power and turnover. What's important to them in a role is very different than what was important for prior generations. So I think we'll continue to see trends and social movements, different things that maybe we haven't seen in the past, impact our organizations. And because we're in the people business, if you really want to get right down to it, I think it's critically important that we connect into what's happening within organizations, are cognizant of that, and also where we can, don't try to contribute to some of that stress and pressure and burnout where we can. Anything else we're hearing, Jennifer?
Yes, Michelle had a question mark, minimal Monday. I said, yeah, Michelle said that you've heard that trend, that minimal Monday means like, I'm tired from the weekend. I'm just come in, and there's some chat there about in the electrical utility industry, people just want to pay their bills. So it's not about, passion in the job. And I heard a new trend because job market is changing so much. Quiet staying as a new trend because the job market is changing so much.
Yeah, quiet staying. Yeah, it's interesting. And if you I'm kind of a junkie on watching what's happening with organizations. I mean, there's been political climate also, does things with jobs as well. So it's interesting to see kind of the movement, not always good. Who's hiring, who's firing, kind of what's happening, budgets cutting, different things that are happening based on different things happening in politics, in the economy, et cetera. Just kind of interesting things to be aware of. All right. While all that's going on, that's our backdrop. This is change managers. This is near and dear to our heart, right? This we understand inside out. So let me just grow this out a little bit and talk about this a little bit. So Gartner, during the pandemic, so 2020, Gartner came out with this top statement, and I've been trying to see if they're still following this thread because I'm really interested in what their research is showing. I haven't seen any more on this, but this was in 2020 when the pandemic came. Remember the pandemic? And it's still, I think it's still kind of this way, sort of combined personal life, professional life. Everything was kind of like this. And the pandemic became a change on top of a change on top of a change, everything combined together. I thought this was a really interesting research study that they did, that the amount of change the average employee could absorb without becoming fatigued was half what it was the prior year. I mean, that tells you how much the pandemic and what happened during that, again, that melding of kind of organizational and personal, did to people's ability or capacity to absorb change. Along that same road, Gartner did an organizational study, and they showed that most organizations, I think this was a US study, were doing 5 enterprise projects. Enterprise projects, think highly complex, lots of change impact, very highly complex, lots of impact over the next 3 years, with 75% of those organizations saying they expect more enterprise projects in the future. No surprise probably to any of us. Change is not slowing down. It's not stopping. If anything, it is escalating. Instant everything, technology, global economy, we could go on, and regulations, compliance, we could go on and on, needing to be competitive, etc. So change is not stopping in the near future. And to the right, another statistic, this is from ProSci, 73% of their organizations in one of the recent best practices survey came out and said, yep, we're saturated, meaning our people's capacity for change is less than the amount of disruption in the environment. So all this is happening, right? All this is happening. Too much change saturation, social movements, generational workforce, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What a better backdrop. I don't think we could get a better backdrop to introduce more human-centered approach for change. Because again, what we don't want to do where we can help is become part of, just the pile-on, right? So what can we do to have a more human-centric approach, building on what we do today? We're not going to throw traditional change management out the window, but how can we be a little bit more human-centric focused? So what I want to do, I'm going to put a poll forward just to understand that volume of change that we just talked about, the Gartner piece, just to hear from you on how much change are your impacted people facing at a single time. You can think about it, department, your stakeholders, your organization, whatever lens you want to use for this poll will be just fine. It'll just give us a flavor for the participants and how much change are people experiencing. So I think, can I do the poll? Yes. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that poll, jump on in, and then I'll turn it around so we can see what people are saying. Just want to see if your experience on the ground is mapping up to what Gartner's saying and what some of the statistics are showing. Got about 40% in. Let's see if we can get up there to 90%. About 60% now. About 78%. Let's see if we can get a little bit more. Let's get it over 80, and then I'll flip it around if we can. If you haven't jumped into the poll, please do so. All right. I think we're as good as we're going to get. We're at 78%. That sounds good to me. I'm going to end it and turn it around for you to see. Here we go. Here's what people said. So 44% of us have 3 to 5. Our stakeholders have 3 to 5. If you add the 44 with the 17 with the 22, where does that take us? 83%. 83% of us have stakeholders that are experiencing 3 to greater than 8 projects at a single time, right? That's significant. Think about that. That's significant. And it begs the question, which is the $1 million question, and that is, Well, how much change is too much, right? Where is that disruption point, capacity and disruption? What is it? And nobody can really tell you that because of a lot of different factors around the projects themselves, around the organization, et cetera. So it's not a perfect science. But what I do think that we showed from doing this poll is that we very much, most of us, map to kind of what the Gartner statistics show. And I bet if I asked you the same question about saturation, many of you, maybe it would mirror the same thing, the same percentages here. 83% of you might say, yep, we're saturated. We're saturated. So that's definitely mapping to the ProSci 73%. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And people are still flowing in, which is great. All right. So with that as our backdrop, what do people really need to change? And this is where I'm going to make the case for traditional change management is not always as humanistic or as human-centric as we might like it to be. I think that there are 3 needs or categories of needs that people need. People need needs. People have to have in order to change. We would all say people need to know about the change, 100%. People need to know about the change. That's all about information and communication. When is this happening? Why is it happening? What should we expect, etc. It's all about information and communication. The need to know is very well understood, not only by change professionals or practitioners like us, but our leaders, our senior leaders, project folks. Of course, we have to communicate for change. Nobody would argue that we don't need to do that. It's a very concrete, they're tests on a project plan or a change plan, right? The need to know. I think also nobody would raise an eyebrow from your project team to your senior leaders if you said, yes, and we need to teach people or instruct or skill them up the need to do this change, to do this new system, this new process, etc. That's all about training and skill building. But let's stop there for a second. If I simply tell you about something and then show you how to do it, are you going to change? What do you think? Will you change? If I show you and I tell you about it, is that enough to get you to change? What do you think? Anybody in the chat or come off mute? Is that enough?
I'm hearing absolutely not. No, I need to know what's in it for me. I'm hearing not always.
Yeah. Think about that for a second. Has anybody ever gone on either a healthy eating, I don't want to call it a diet plan, but diet plan, healthy eating, or maybe an activity or exercise journey? Okay. Most people would say they know what they need to eat or the amount of activity that they should be doing. Right? And people might go as far as to say, I'm working with a dietitian or a weight loss coach, or I'm working with a trainer at my gym, right, to do more healthy living or more activity. But how many diets or healthy living plans, exercise programs fail? And by fail, people just fall off, right? Think about it. It's funny. It's a little bit funny. Every year at my gym, there's all these new people that show up. And, 1 month later, half those people are gone, or if not more, right? I can't remember what the statistic is on gym memberships, but gym memberships make a lot of money on people not showing up. So that's kind of interesting. And if you think about that for a second, need to know and need to do is logic. If I tell you and show you, you will change. It's the rational part of our brain, or the rational side of change. But we probably all know that change is both logical or rational, and there's an emotional component, right? With people, there's an emotional component, and that emotional component sometimes can overweigh or be even more important than the logical piece. So when I think about traditional change management, I think oftentimes it's heavily focused on the need to know and need to do. And not that those are wrong, those have to be there. They have to be there, but I don't think they're enough. Logic alone is not enough for people to change long term, change and stick. Maybe it's enough to change temporarily, short term, but it's not enough for change and stick. And we're looking for change and stick. We're looking for sustainable change. We get our business benefits, project benefits, outcomes, goals, etc., right? So think about this one for a second and think about your practices or what you've seen or maybe even what you've done. Are you leaning into what I call the need to feel? This one's a little fuzzy. Need to know and need to do are very black and white, concrete tasks on a change plan, right? Communicate, train. Communicate this, now communicate this, now communicate this, train this, train this, train this, retrain this, re-up the skill here, right? Concrete tasks. The need to feel, I scratch my head. I don't know what that really means. I would say that one is all about or more about feeling. It's about how we feel about our organizational culture. And I'm gonna unpack this one for you. And how connected or lack of connectedness we feel at work within our working group. Need to feel to me is very much about psychological safety. And I oftentimes think when I say that word, God, that's a buzzword, right? So what does that really mean here? To me, what that really means in our language, in change language, is that it's okay for me to be human as I'm moving through change. And that means that all of us are unique, right? We have strengths, weaknesses, idiosyncrasies, quirks. I'm just going to use Jennifer as an example, me and Jennifer for this example. We've just gone through a change, and Jennifer is a rock star. She has gotten this thing down and knows exactly what to do and is completely proficient day 4 after go live. I, on the other hand, require more support. I might make a few more errors. I might need some more time. Jennifer and our journey through change or how we are adapting to this change is different because we are different. It doesn't mean that I'm bad and she's good. It's just we're different. So within reason, it's okay if it takes me a little bit longer. I make some errors. I require additional support. Within reason, what that doesn't mean is that Jennifer has to have this down in 4 days and I get a year to figure it out. So within reason, need to feel is that it is really thinking about or connecting with people on the individual level and, not diminishing them or degrading them because they're not getting it right away. They're making mistakes, allowing a grace period, allowing people to be human and move through change without fear of repercussion, penalty or repercussion. I mentioned culture and connectedness, so I want to talk about that a little bit. I think that culture very much defines psychological safety, how safe I feel in an environment as I'm starting to move through change. Culture is usually defined at the top level, and I'm going to call that the macro culture. Culture is the way we do things, how connected or siloed we are, norms, the ways we make consensus, decisions, etc. It really applies to everything. But your leader either brings that macro culture into your working group or they make a slight tweak to it. And the culture that embodies you is really the culture that your leader brings forward. So the culture I'm talking about here is really your leader and or working group. Is the culture, is it don't make any errors, don't take too long? Is it one of penalizing or penalty? If so, that's going to create more resistance, right? More resistance, more fear right out of the gate. If it's not, if it's, we expect that, and not just the words are said, but the actions support it, we expect and we appreciate that people are unique and we're going to have support for different levels, right? And we understand that Michelle and Jennifer are going to adapt differently, and that's okay. That's a very different culture. That's going to show up very differently in how people change. The connectedness piece is if I feel disconnected from my working group leader, that I'm scared to show my true self. I'm scared of the fear of what other people might think or do, that penalty piece. If I'm connected with my working group, then If we're very well connected, then it feels more like a safety net that can help me. So that's a lot to unpack in this need to feel. The need to feel is really at an individual level versus if we're thinking about communicating for change and skill building, that we can do in a broader stroke, right? This is definitely at the individual level. And again, I've talked about the working group and kind of the people that surround. I don't think we as change practitioners, sort of in the outside looking in sometimes, are the best resources to fill this need to feel. It's really the leaders and change agents and SMEs and peers. Okay, that's a lot to unpack. With human centricity, we're going to try to connect a little bit better into this need to feel. And we're going to use elements of all of these, but I just wanted to explain here the three needs that I think everybody requires to successfully adapt and adopt to change. Again, go ahead and chat with questions, comments, and thoughts. I'm just going to kind of keep rolling here. What I would like to know from you, and we'll just take a few minutes here, or a minute or so, this need to feel concept, is that something that your organization or your change practice supports? And really, again, to unravel that a little bit, it's, do we think about psychological safety for our change projects and how we can support that? And all warts on the table, I don't always do this. I don't always have the opportunity to do this. But it's definitely on my brain. So that's half the battle. In the chat, or feel free to come off mute if you want to voice out, that's okay too.
I see. What would support look like in relation to the need to feel? So somebody was just looking for you to kind of build that out.
Concrete, yeah. Support would look like, the leader setting the stage and saying, okay, we're all going through this change. We can adapt and adopt to it differently within reason. Here's the different levels of support that we're going to offer. You choose what works for you, the power of choice. And then I'm going to give you some additional tools and things to think about that also connect into this.
Excellent.
So I think
I also saw the need to include the grieving period.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, understand that people are going. I love that, and that connects with Kubler-Ross change curve perfectly, right? That people, if they're losing something to gain something, so be aware of that and not trying to shuffle them too fast through is what I take, and that's a really insightful, thoughtful comment. So thank you for all the comments. It's awesome. Do you think, one additional question here, do you think if you think about traditional change management, does your purview of that connect with mine, that it is more focused on the need to know and need to do, which is the concrete kind of tactic for change, and less on this need to feel because it's fuzzy, it's hard, who would do that? Feels hard. What do you think?
I can, I'm going to come off mute.
Yeah, Carisha, I hope I'm saying the name right.
Yeah, you did.
Perfect.
I am a change consultant, and I think for me, the answer is yes, but I do think that based off of my work experience, I was in HR for 3 years
Oh yeah,
prior
great
to becoming
experience.
change. And so then you take both of those and you kind of have to think about the culture side of it.
Yes, love it.
Just with, so yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, love it. Thank you. Anybody else? Agree, disagree that traditional change management more focused on know and do, the tactics, kind of the tactical, the easier, not easier, but the more simple things to do, and measure and say, yep, we did that. Anybody else want to jump in? All right, I'll keep, oh, go ahead, Michelle. Yes, please.
Oh, sorry, I was trying to find my hand up.
You're okay.
I would say those that are educated in change management include the need to feel, but sometimes those at the top that make the decisions aren't. So it's
Absolutely
just
true.
need to know and do. And sometimes even the know is not shared the best.
It's true. It's true. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. So thanks for sharing that. So anything you can do around bringing this idea of psychological safety, what I call the feeling piece, helping support cultures and normalizing the idea that everybody has to, or breaking the idea that everybody has to adapt to change in exactly the same way. And I would include in there that resistance is a normal part of the process, right? Sometimes in organizations, I think, with leaders, it's like, oh, they're resisting, we've done something wrong. And, I would argue, actually, we've probably done something right. If they care enough to show that and we can actually solve from it, that is a good thing, So normalizing the idea that culture matters and not everybody will adapt exactly the same, and that's okay. That's okay with some boundaries, That's really the point here. Okay. So what are we going to talk about for the next? Oh, geez, I got to speed me up, but that's okay. I'm not going to lose any of the value here by speeding up, so don't worry. We are going to talk about elements of human-centric change. The first will be about embedding positives and strengths into our change practices. We're going to talk briefly about that. We're going to talk about co-creation, collaboration, meeting people where they're at, and then finally understanding it from their perspective, getting in their shoes. Okay. So if anybody, this might sound a lot like rainbows and unicorns, but I'm going to make it really balanced. I'm a huge fan of positive psychology in terms of how can we leverage it to bring forward the strengths and positives of whatever we do. But that doesn't mean that, again, everything is roses and unicorns, or I have rose-colored glasses and I'm not open or willing to see what's, the needs or problems to solve that we have. But the point of this really is, as humans, we start out with a deprecated view, which is in the yellow. We like to solve problems, and we oftentimes will start out with what is missing that we need to fix. What didn't work right in the last change project that we can do better this time, which is absolutely fine. There's no problem with identifying the yellow. But interestingly enough, organizations that look to bolster strengths, use kind of a strengths or a needs-based approach, show higher job performance, higher satisfaction and engagement, and actually not only those soft benefits, they're actually more profitable. So the hard benefits also are met and measured. Again, this is not going to be roses and unicorns. If you want to know more about the background of this positive psychology and what I'm quoting here, reach out to me. I'm going to give you my information, and I'll show you some studies, what companies specifically have put this sort of embedded into their practices and what kind of outcomes they got. So if you want more about kind of unpack this slide, let me know. The point being is, or where I'm taking this is, how can we as change professionals and practitioners start with or from a place of strength, okay? Understanding that there are needs and problems to solve and opportunities. So what would that look like? What would that look like? On the top is the 5 phases of project management for those of you that either work in projects, maybe are PMP or no PMI. On the bottom is going to be, when they all get unrevealed, the ACMP change management standard, the process groups. And let me just build this out really quick, and then I'm going to talk about, okay, that's okay. I know what I'm saying here. I don't know why that didn't come up, but the point of this is, when we first start a change project, can we think about the sweet spot of the organization? What is the organization known for? What are the strengths or good things about the organization or the departments we're working with or from? So starting very early in our projects, thinking about the impacted stakeholders and thinking about what are some of the strengths, positives, their sweet spots that we want to bring forward. So in our evaluation of impact and organizational readiness, process group number 1, we're going to think about our impacted stakeholders, organizations, departments, locations, and we're going to look for those golden nuggets. We're going to surface those. Those are going to become part of our change strategy and change plan. In planning and execution, We also want to think about, this was the organization, we're going to think about the impacted people, I mentioned that, and bring their sweet spots forward. We're also going to think back to previous change efforts and what worked well. What were some of the strengths? What were some of the positives that we saw in prior execution? We're going to surface, and that's what I'm missing, and I don't know how I'm missing some text here, but I'll get you a nice new copy of this that has all the text. So we're thinking about in 1, 2, and 3, the sweet spot of the organization, my apologies, the sweet spot positives or strengths of the impacted people, sweet spots, strengths or positives of prior change efforts. Okay, so we've got all that good stuff. We're going to start that, and that's going to become some of the underpinning for our change management strategy and our tactical change management plan. As we start to execute our plan, we're going to highlight those strengths, things that are happening, and it could be either progress or milestones or small wins. Can't be that people did the change, right? It can't be, it's got to be something a little bit meatier than that, but where we have opportunities to highlight, showcase wins, progress forward, that will help bring strengths forward, continues momentum forward. And finally, when you close out the change management effort, we're going to think about all the good as well as what we could fix. All the good, how can we highlight where we're going forward? What's the good, the strengths? And all of those then become an underpinning to what was the good of our prior change efforts. This is not, again, trying to bring all the good and strengths forward and eliminating all the opportunities, misses, fixes. It's not looking at that. All it's trying to do is bring forward positives and strengths that we make sure we include into our executable plan and make visible. By showing people that good things are happening, positives and strengths, we continue momentum forward. And it feels good, right, to know that good things are happening and people are being recognized. I have a job aid for you, and I can't recall, but I think it's in there. If not, I'll make sure that I get a more improved copy for you. I've got questions that you can ask throughout your change project that will help you surface these positives and strengths. Okay, so there's actually questions that I ask to organizations when I start working with them to help surface some of this information and make sure that it shows up in communications and how we train, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Jennifer, question or just a thumbs up on getting the questions? All right, cool. All right. All right. One of my favorite techniques, absolute favorite, I just did a workshop with my client. I'm doing some change work for a client for about 1.5 years. And we just went through a succession planning project. We're kind of at a, I don't know, in a midstream stopgap, I'd say. And I use this technique. So I learned it in grad school. I absolutely love it. It works for change. It also works for any conversation that you might have where you have to surface some negatives, some positives, and you want to move people into the right direction. So let me tell you what's happening in the context of this conversation, why it's structured this way, and why it matters. First of all, if you want to use this, you want to give people an agenda, and you want to tell them the first 15 minutes of the meeting, we're going to talk about what's not working. Be prepared to come talk about what's not working. Second piece, we're gonna flip, and you have to be a good timekeeper or have a timekeeper to do this. What is working in the change? 15 minutes, come prepared to discuss that. Last 15 minutes, what can we do in the future to make more work in the change? And have them come prepared. So they come in, you start asking the questions, you're diligently authoring or writing everything they're saying down. And so you've got what's not working, some of which you may already know. You understand what is working for them or what they see as value or a strength. And in number 3, they're actually helping you co-create because they're giving you ideas of what we can do in the future to make more work in the change. Okay, so some interesting things happen within this 45 minutes. First of all, it's not roses and unicorns. We asked what's not working. We started the conversation with being inclusive. We know things aren't perfect. We want to hear from you, right? What is not working? Then we shifted to a positive stance about what is working. And they might have had to dig a little bit deeper to get there, but they're surfacing the good things or the positives that are happening. And then again, in number 3, they're actually co-creating with you. And people I have found, even if I take things in number 3 that there's no way we could do this, if I listen to them, I document it, and then I come back around and tell them what's happened with it, they're appreciative of having the opportunity to contribute, even and have their voice heard, even if their suggestion or solution in number 3 is not workable. Why do I like this technique so much? It's inclusive, right? It's balancing what's not working with what's working. It allows people an opportunity to co-create and be a part of the change, which is always good. And the other thing I really like about this technique is we've probably all been in meetings before where it's a 45-minute meeting and we spend 45 minutes talking about what's not working. And then we go to our next meeting. What happens when you go to your next meeting? If you've been in a meeting with 5 people, let's say, and you didn't get anything accomplished, you kind of got stuck on this, and then 3 of those people are in your next meeting. What happens? That conversation or kind of the energy, and I'm not an energy guru by any chance, but will drag into your next meeting. And you have what I call a productivity drop. Because you're back here on what's not working. You're kind of in that mindset of we didn't get what we needed to get done. And you're going to drag that into your next meeting. Or if you're back to your desk, you'll drag a little bit of that productivity drop there. This way, if you want to think about it as negative, this is negative, this is positive, this is positive. There's no productivity drop. People walk out of this meeting with a co-creation piece. They're walking out on a positive stance. This technique, how it really works, let me just build this really quick. You document everything, and then you come back around next meeting. You show them what you've documented, and you talk about what you've been able to work from their co-creation, and you start right over again. So I use this technique, and for a project that had gone really bad. This was many, many years ago, and this is why it became part of my arsenal. So I had to go do a post-implementation meeting. It was a process and technology change that had not gone well, right? We've probably all been there. And I had an angry crowd. So I said, let me try this. This is a appreciative inquiry technique, if anybody's familiar with that, a positive psychology movement method, process, call it whatever you like. I learned it in grad school and said, how bad could this be, right? It's going to be a bad crowd anyways. I tried this and I went back to my desk, and no joke, a senior VP called me and said, about 15 minutes back to my desk, when I came into that meeting, I didn't think that you had us. I didn't think that you would be able to lead us to where we needed to be. After that meeting, I feel better. I feel like you've got us and we're moving in the right direction. For me, that was enough to say, yep, I like the way this directionally took people, how it made them feel. I'm going to use it moving forward. So this technique is very simple. There's lots of things you can do with it. You want to talk more about how to actually use it, put it into practice. We can. For sake of time, I'll keep going. But this is one of my favorite techniques. It's really making those positives and strengths and co-creation front and center. In our, wow, 7 minutes. Woo! Okay. I'm trying to slow down a little bit, everybody, but I want to be cognizant of time. We all know that change, that need to know. Surely we need to do communication in change, but, and I'm just going to, for sake of time, just kind of put this up. I was going to ask you about how you think communication is different from engagement. Communication and engagement, I would argue, are both needed for change. And look at the way I've defined communication versus engagement. I think they're very different things. Communication to me is information delivery. Engagement, it can include information delivery, but it's more about being active, being in trusted relationships, being more propelled to act than straight communication alone. I think they're very different things. But what I wanted to do was give you a tool in my next 5 minutes, that hits against both communication, but also engagement, co-creation, and collaboration. And this is in the job aid for sure. So something that I like to use for every change that I do is called a change story. And I don't know if anybody's using stories in your practices or not. Things told in story form by people we have trusted relationships with have been shown. A recent study came out of Stanford said people remember things told in story form by those that they have connections with, trusted relationships, 22 times more than information shared in other ways or by people that we don't have a connection with. And that makes sense if you think about it, that, something said by your best friend, it's more meaningful than something by someone you don't know, right? So I wanted to provide you with a very simple storytelling technique, and this is in the job aid as well. It's a 3-parter. I think it's very simple. And it's really limitless on how you can use it. So I want to talk a minute about that, what it is and how you can use it. The reason the brain remembers stories is as children, we were entrenched in that, beginning, middle, and end of a story. Beginning, middle, and end. And that's exactly what this format is. The beginning is, what is driving this change? What is that case for change, current pain, or opportunity? Why are we changing? And I literally do it in this box form, but never deliver it in this box form. Okay. So part 1 of my change story, why are we changing? And I do 3 to 5 bullets. Part 2 is what is the future? Here's where, if there is a what's in it for me, benefits at the individual or department level, we're going to identify those. What's in it for us as an organization? What's that future look like? And this is where we can start to kind of customize our story to our different stakeholder groups based on the what's in it for me or what people care about, and that will differ. Part 3 is going to be how we get to the future. And that is very simply 2 to 3 bullets about what people can expect in the near term, people-facing activities or actions. Simple technique. I literally do it in this block form. This technique you can use to communicate clearly. You can also put it in the hands of change agents and leaders and have them create their own stories, share their stories, which is engagement, with their groups, put this in pictures, visuals. It is a way that you can take kind of common messaging for change and have it available in a lot of different forms so it doesn't just become a flat communication. The other thing I really love about this technique, if you have a long-term change, it doesn't have to be a asset or deliverable that you do one time and you never touch again, because how you get to the future is going to evolve over time. These 2, part 1 and 2, might stay the same, but part 3 is going to evolve. If we have a long tail change, we're expecting this, now we're expecting that. So can be put into a lot of different hands to communicate, engage with people, have them share their story back. I've had change agents, I've given them kind of the frame for this and the key points, and then had them pull out and say what resonates with their group, and then share it out in however they choose to. Again, that creates kind of that engagement buzz. It's not just a flat communication coming from Michelle. Can be really, really impactful. And again, I think this technique, I talked about co-creation, how you can give it to people, they can share it, create their own, have people play it back. It also really looks to understand where people are at in terms of the what's in it for me, and looks to invite them into the change. It's a very kind of soft and welcoming story way to do communication and engagement. And it can really help, do this in addition to other communication or engagement vehicles. Woo! 1 minute. Look at that. I want to be cognizant of people's time. So I am going to very quickly talk about this. I think when we're going through change, oftentimes we are laser focused on the project we're working at, and we don't think about what is happening to those impacted stakeholders, that their purview is really what's been newly implemented, what are we still trying to implement, and what's coming right around the corner. And so this is all about getting this, what I'd call a bigger picture view, and really being able to get into our stakeholders' shoes, not just that one project. Difficult to do, and that's why I'm saying contact me to learn more. I will give you some ideas about how you can see that big picture of change. And from that purview, it can help you improve your planning, but more importantly, we can start to make logical connections between change, because people simply do not adapt and adopt to change one project at a time. They just don't. So this allows us to get in that kind of more humanistic view of everything that's happening on their plate. Woo! 5:30, 6:30 on the dot. That was a lot of information quickly, folks. I apologize. I always chock these sessions full of a lot of information, and maybe I did 1 to 2 slides too much, so I do apologize for that. But you can get a hold of me, and here's how. This is just a little job aid. Again, I've got this and more for you coming. The change story technique is coming. I think I have those questions to identify positives and surface those in the job aid as well. If not, I will make sure I get those to you. So this is coming to you as a walk away. I do have an offer for all of you. I have change management boot camp. I'm a QEP. If you're interested, here's some upcoming classes. These are the virtual live classes. You can get a nice discount. Reach out to the chapter. They'll work with me, and I'll get you a code to save some dollars. You're 15% off on the class for your CCMP if you're interested in that. And here is my information. Whew. That's a lot. Sorry, everybody, for that went really fast.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. We really appreciate you bringing your knowledge to the chapter. We will, as I said in the chat, make sure we follow up with you for the presentation and the job aid. And we appreciate your participation, and I'll see you again next time. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.